Thanks for watching.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in to my latest broadcast. Thank you for being here today. And thank you for listening. It is your host, Emmanuel I. Smith. And today's date is Friday, May 1st, 2026. The time is 2:42 p.m. and I am in Miami-Dade County, Florida. I would like to welcome you to my latest lecture, which is entitled Solutions, a Blueprint on How to Legally Remedy Gangstalking. And I'll let you know, ladies and gentlemen, that I tend to do these lectures outdoors, and I may have to raise or project my voice at various intervals to drown out the background noise. Please adjust your volume accordingly, and thank you for watching. So, ladies and gentlemen, ultimately the EIS Media Group lecture series, the EIS Media Group conglomerate, and its holding company, Bible Discourses LLC, which are all founded and chaired by the man speaking to you, Emmanuel Isaiah Smith. And this organization is an organization of solutions. We are an organization of remedies. We are an organization of cures. And we are an organization of problem solving, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I, as the sole proprietor of these entities, have worked tirelessly over the years. We're going on our 9th year now on the internet. 9 years and going strong, ladies and gentlemen. I, as a researcher, as an editor-in-chief, and as a chief executive officer of a company that seeks to improve the overall quality of the trajectory forward that the global community of planet Earth all share. Now, the way I do this, ladies and gentlemen, is I identify problems, I identify issues, I identify shortcomings, I analyze these conundrums, and I offer solutions to the general public. That is what I do. That is what my company is about. That is what my work is about. And as we progress forward through 2026, and ladies and gentlemen, it's very exciting. In about 9 months, EIS Media Group and Bible Discourses LLC will have entered its 10th year on the internet. And that is a cause for celebration. We are approaching 10 years of seeking the truth, finding the truth, and communicating the truth to a worldwide audience. Gentlemen and ladies and gentlemen. So what we have today is we have me, your host, E.I. Smith. I'm going to do a lecture for you today on how to remedy the problem known as gang stalking. And we're going to get right into it, ladies and gentlemen. There's a lot to unpack here. We may be able to get all of this information into the hour. However, if it has to go over an hour, I will let you know at about the 50-minute mark, ladies and gentlemen. So, when you talk about gang stalking, it is a political protocol. It's a state-sanctioned, organized, catastrophe-causing mechanism. And it's obviously got state actors. All right, state-sanctioned actors that are controlling the mechanism, which is essentially disguised as a community policing mechanism and a national security mechanism. Now, who are the actors involved, ladies and gentlemen? Well, there are obviously military actors involved. There are law enforcement actors involved. There are political actors involved. There are corporate actors involved. And there are deputized United States citizens who I refer to as signal flingers. Okay, they fling signals to other stalkers and they receive signals from other stalkers so as to act a certain way or as to do a certain thing to a person or just simply generally. So how do you stop such a thing? Well, first of all, you have to acknowledge it. I don't see the Supreme Court of the United States, the Congress of the United States, or the Executive Office of the President of the United States doing away with clandestine thuggery protocols like gang stalking, which incorporates the energy and labor of useful idiots all across the country, including Hawaii and Alaska, to do the bidding of a bunch of power-hungry, self-inflated, megalomaniacal war profiteers and their cronies. So, how do you do this? First of all, you have to get an acknowledgement of its existence. All this crap about this thing not existing is falling flat. Okay, as far as I can see, and as far as my research has guided me, there are at least 10,000 people in the United States of America who have at some point or another gone online and said, hey, I'm experiencing this thing. I'm a targeted individual. If 10,000 people were to come to you and say something about a thing, that's evidence. Okay? If you go to a court of law, for instance, ladies and gentlemen, and you're talking about the trial of a 18-year-old kid who stole a box of popcorn out of his local grocery store. All right, this kid was caught. He was arrested. He denied the charges. The store manager says he saw him do it. He says there are witnesses. Okay, this 18-year-old kid, he stole a box of popcorn out of the grocery store. He is now sitting in a courtroom and he is on trial, right? Now think of it. Let's say that the store manager's testimony was not enough, because the store manager says, yeah, I saw that kid steal a box of popcorn off the shelf and I want him prosecuted and I want restitution. But the assistant manager looks over at him and says, you know what? That kid was in the store, but he wasn't the one who stole the box of popcorn off the shelf. It was another kid, right? So now you have conflicting testimonies. The store manager says he did it. The assistant manager says he didn't do it. So now you need more witnesses. Why? Because this particular grocery store doesn't have surveillance cameras. So you're going to have to go off of witnesses. So far, one witness says he did it. The other witness says he didn't do it. So let's say 10 more witnesses come forward. Let's say 5 warehouse workers and 5 canned food workers that work in the grocery store came forward. And all 10 of these people said, you know what, that kid, he did it. All right. Now you have 11 witnesses saying that he did it and 1 witness saying that he didn't do it. So if it goes to the jury just off of that information, the jury's going to bring him in guilty. Why? Because 11 people said he did it and 1 person said he didn't do it. The people that are claiming that he did it, the number outweighs the number of people who said he didn't do it. Right? So let me ask you a question. And this is a feasible scenario, ladies and gentlemen. We've all seen these scenarios happen in your local news and in documentaries and in autobiographical content and in movies that are based on a true story. We've seen these types of scenarios where a person is accused of something. They go to court. They deny the charges, typically, unless it behooves them to plead guilty. So they deny the charges, it goes to a trial, and the defense attorney presents evidence as to why the person's not guilty, and the prosecutor presents evidence as to why the person is guilty. Whoever presents their case the best, whoever has the most compelling evidence, whoever is able to communicate their case to the jury best, that is the person who the jury typically sides with. Okay, when juries are selected, they're typically selected on their capacity or their ability to observe facts and make decisions on those facts based on the evidence. That's the point of a jury selection, that process. You want jurors that you are, as attorneys, you want jurors that are impartial. You want jurors that are intelligent. You want jurors that are socially responsible, and you want jurors that are inclined to look at the case, the facts, the evidence, the attorneys, the judge, and all parties involved with some impartiality so they can make a responsible decision on the facts, right? But in the case of this kid in the candy store, right, or the grocery store, 11 workers are saying he did it. 1 worker is saying he didn't do it. If it goes to a jury, they're typically going to side with the store manager who says he did it, because there's more witnesses, right? How credible are these witnesses? We don't know. We don't know how many of those grocery store workers are inebriated or intoxicated on the job, right? We don't know how many of those grocery store workers have a vendetta against the kid. Maybe they don't like his shoes or how he dresses. You don't know how many of these grocery store workers are inclined to lie. You don't know if any of these grocery store workers were bribed to say this guy did it. If the case goes that deep, maybe the case gets overturned if they find malfeasance on the part of the grocery workers. But on its face and the here and now, the kid may get convicted because more people said he did it than he didn't do it. So I don't think there's any lawyer in the country, any attorney or judge who listens to these facts and just based on what I've presented to you would say, well, the kid's innocent. No, the opposite. They'll say he's guilty. Right? So 10 people can come forward and give their testimony about a thing in a court of law and result in a guilty verdict for a guy who stole a box of popcorn out of a grocery store. Right? So let's take something a little more substantial, a little more consequential. Let's talk about clandestine gang stalking. If 10,000 people come forward, probably not in a court of law, unless there was some sort of a class action lawsuit that were brought against the U.S. federal government by all the targeted individuals in the country. Okay, I can guarantee you I would sign on for that. Ladies and gentlemen, I might even look into being the initiator of such a class action lawsuit myself. But let's keep it moving, ladies and gentlemen. So let's say there were a class action lawsuit. 10,000 people came forward and wrote in legally admissible statements. Yes, I am a targeted individual. I've been a targeted individual for this long. These are the things I experience. These are the kinds of people that I encounter. This is how often I encounter it. And this is the damage that this program has done to my existence or the existence of my loved ones. 10,000 people, 10,000 U.S. citizens come forward with something like that. That's evidence. Okay? What would possess 10,000 people of all making up a story about what they go through on a daily basis? What would they have to gain? 10,000 people. From what I understand, most targeted individuals do not know each other. I know that there are probably targeted individual focus groups and things like that online, and there might be targeted individuals across the country organizing in-house meetings between themselves and other targeted persons so that they can get to know each other and exchange ideas and so forth. Me personally, ladies and gentlemen, I tend to work alone because, quite frankly, I'm starting to suspect that here in the United States, there are a lot of people who are gang stalkers that are trying to infiltrate the targeted individual community so that they can relay to other gang stalkers what TIs are talking about. So gang stalkers can alter their trajectory, alter their program, alter their protocols, so they can continue pestering targeted individuals regardless of targeted individuals coming forward about it. See, gang stalkers like to hold on as long as possible. They're a sticky bunch. They're tough to get rid of. And that's unfortunate, because if you don't want to be near a person, if you don't want to be around a person, you just don't go near them. But see, targeted individuals like myself don't have that option. We can't tell gang stalkers, just go, flee, get out of here, go somewhere else, right? Because gang stalkers use interactions like that to fuel the fire. They may go and find another stalker and tell them, hey, you see that person right there? They just got aggressive with me. They just got angry with me. They just threatened me. And then your gang stalking campaign will intensify. So sometimes it's best to just get up and walk away from a stalker. But you get up and walk away from a stalker, sometimes they send 2 or 3 after you. You see? So it's difficult to get rid of a gang stalker. Something you have to do legally. You have to go after the program at its highest reaches. You see? So if you look at it along those lines, it'll make a lot more sense to you, ladies and gentlemen. But when you talk about how to legally remedy gang stalking. Well, first, targeted persons, you have to go to the proper channels, okay? Me personally, I've done FOIAs on gang stalking with the FBI. I've written the CIA about it. Not recently, but about 5 years ago, I wrote the CIA about it. I've written the Department of Justice about it. I've written the Department of Defense about it. I've written the offices of the president about it. I've written political leaders about it. I've written elected officials about clandestine gang stalking, and furthermore, I do online audio-visual content on clandestine gang stalking, and have done so for 9 years now. So I've done my part, okay, to the extent that any targeted individual can do their part in terms of getting the word out about gang stalking. Now, if it doesn't stop, a targeted individual does not have to feel as if their efforts were not enough, or their efforts were not heard, or their efforts were not successful. No, your efforts are successful. Okay, there are a lot of people in a lot of different places around the world talking about gang stalking. It's still kind of an underground topic, okay? It's kind of a fringe topic. It's a topic that is not exactly mainstream at the present time. I mean, it's obviously in the imaginations of a lot of people, in the media, in entertainment, in sports, in politics, okay? It is a topic that people are hearing about more and more, but it has not quite gotten the attention that it deserves. So if you are getting the word out as a targeted individual, then you're doing the right thing. Okay, that's one way to legally remedy it. You bring it to the attention of people. You know, some people, there are persons who use town hall meetings or city council meetings where members of the community are allowed to speak to their city councilman to get the word out. Now, there are pros and cons to that approach. Okay, and here's what I mean by that. One of the upsides to that is, okay, you go to a town hall meeting or a city council meeting, and you give your local city council people the rundown on clandestine gang stalking. Okay, fair enough. So now you've gotten the word out in your own way. But you got to keep something in mind. There are a lot of targeted individuals in the United States right now who became targeted individuals in the first place from having confronted city council in town hall meetings. Okay? There are a number of people who have gone to these city hall meetings or these town hall meetings and raised complex issues to their city manager or their mayor and the city council or the board of commissioners, and done it in such a way so as one of them said, well, they felt threatened by this person. Yeah, this person came to a city hall meeting and they stepped to the microphone, or they were called to the microphone, and they started talking about political issues that they thought we were missing, and how we weren't, up to par, and how we were not doing our jobs. And we found it threatening that they would come to our city hall meeting and do that. A lot of people who have done that have wound up as targeted individuals the next day. The very next day, they're a TI. And that's actually a quick and easy way of becoming a targeted individual, because city council people, and really U.S. politicians in general, they're easily threatened. Okay, if a hummingbird flies past them too fast, they get scared. Okay, U.S. politicians have sort of this fear complex. And they get scared real easily, and they get offended, and they get threatened really easily. And sometimes if you say the wrong thing to the wrong politician, even if you mean no harm, they could mark you to their security team as a threat. They could go to their security team and say, hey, that person right there who wrote me this letter, I think that this letter is threatening. Or you see that person right there who came to that town hall meeting and confronted city council about those political matters that they thought were important, but that they didn't think we thought was important enough. That person scares me. Can you do something about that person, right? That person could become immediately placed on some sort of a blacklist and targeted. So city council meetings are risky. Okay, there are certain senators and Congress people that are known for being a little more rugged, a little more durable in the face of criticism from the general public. But then you have others that are a little more on the squishy side, and they get real scared real easy. And they can report you as a threatening person if you raise the concern to them in a way that they find to be scary. So that's one way of actually intensifying your problems. I mean, me personally, I learned in 2016, ladies and gentlemen, about 10 years ago, that one of the many ways that a person can become a targeted individual is by going to a city council meeting or a town hall meeting and creating a ruckus. You can become a targeted individual right then and there on the spot because they have your name and vital statistics before you begin speaking. And if they don't have your name and vital statistics before you begin speaking, if it's like an open mic type deal, it would not be difficult for somebody in plain clothes to follow you home, get your address. If you drive, get your license plate, match it up to a driver's license. And now they got your vital statistics and can throw you in a gangstalking campaign if this particular elected official feels threatened by you. So me personally, I've decided to skip city council, that whole setup. I've gone directly to the Supreme Court with my issues. Okay, I've gone directly to the office of the president. I've gone directly to the DOD and the DOJ. And made my concerns heard. So having done that, I've done my part. That and the audio-visual content that I have cultivated over the past 10 years. These are the things that I thrive on. So there's that. Now another way to legally remedy gangstalking, and we're going to talk about this from the government actor standpoint. We've talked about it from the citizen standpoint, but let's talk about it from the government actor standpoint. So from the standpoint of a government actor, like, for example, if you're an elected official, or maybe you're an elected judge, or perhaps you're a Supreme Court justice, or perhaps you're a member of Congress, or if you're an executive in the office of the president, you can look at it and you can do a press conference on it. It would take literally 10 minutes for the press secretary of the United States to do a press conference on behalf of the president talking about what people are alleging in clandestine gangstalking campaigns. At that point, it becomes national news, and it sparks a national conversation. It sparks a national debate. It sparks national awareness about it. Easy. A 10-minute press conference at the federal level is all you need. And it doesn't even really have to be a press conference at the federal level. A local elected official could hold a press conference, maybe take 10 minutes of your time, and talk about gangstalking and the concerns that U.S. citizens across this country are reporting about it. If a locally elected official brings that to the national attention, it immediately becomes a national news story because it's such a hot topic. It's controversial. It's fringe. It brings into question the whole concept of life, liberty, and happiness. It's a constitutional question. It's a rights question. It's a civil rights question. It's an inalienable rights question. Okay, it concerns all branches of government. All you need is a 10-minute press conference by a local official. That's all you need. And just as easily a state official, like a state senator or a state representative or a governor, could hold a 10-minute press conference. I promise you, your state, your political platform, all of these things would be national news for the next week strong. And if enough Americans show an interest in this topic, it could become the news story of the year. And as the global community catches on, it could become the news story of the century. Ladies and gentlemen, all it would take is a 10-minute news conference. Any elected official or any official at the state or federal levels, elected or appointed, has the power, the capacity, and the resources to call a 10-minute press conference on the merits of clandestine gang stalking. And I can promise you the media will pick right up on it. And it is not a conspiracy theory, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to talk about in a few lectures from now, okay, we are going to talk about a program that was run in East Germany from 1970 to 1989 that is the spiritual progenitor of gang stalking, to the degree that programs like COINTELPRO and MKUltra are the spiritual progenitor to gang stalking. Okay, it was a program run by the East German Stasi, or what we know as the East German Secret Police, to destabilize political dissidents and people that they thought were hostile or negative to state interests. The mechanisms that this Stasi used on East German citizens mirrored gang stalking so closely that any reasonable person would come to the conclusion that gang stalking itself, how it's been presented and communicated by targeted individuals, is directly derived from this program that they ran in East Germany by the Stasi. Even to a higher degree, and when I say to a higher degree, I mean more directly derived from this program than MKUltra or COINTELPRO, which are indirect progenitors. Gang stalking is indirectly derived from COINTELPRO and MKUltra, but it's directly derived from this East German Stasi mechanism. And we're going to talk about it in some depth a few lectures from now, ladies and gentlemen. Stay tuned. Now, when I say secret police, I'm talking about the East German secret police. I'm not sitting here accusing American law enforcers at the federal, state, or local level of being the root cause of gang stalking. Do I believe that it has roots in law enforcement objectives? Yes. But I believe that the overwhelming vast majority of law enforcers in the United States are not complicit in clandestine gang stalking. I believe quite a few of them have knowledge of it and know how it works. And I believe that quite a few have participated, but I am not accusing the American law enforcement community, the American law enforcement community of being gang stalkers, okay? Gang stalking is a very complex thing. There are tens of millions of people from many different occupational backgrounds and demographic backgrounds that are complicit in this disruption mechanism, okay? Which is unconstitutional on its face. And I think it's important to note that it's unconstitutional because there are state actors in it. at the federal, state, and local levels, ladies and gentlemen. So definitely look at some of my previous videos on YouTube and Facebook about the various state actors that are involved. I think you'll find them very enlightening, ladies and gentlemen. But that's another way that gang stalking could be remedied. A 10-minute press conference by any local official, any state official, any federal official. And I can promise you that the official that does that press conference will instantly become famous. And whatever local, state, or federal official that holds that press conference will be recognized on the world stage as the first to openly acknowledge the realities of clandestine gang stalking. Ladies and gentlemen. Now, when it comes right down to it, you're going to notice that there are quite a few complex political mechanisms that are in play when it comes to clandestine gang stalking and its auspices. Now, when you talk about a remedy, obviously it has to come from a legal standpoint. So what Congress could do is you could take a number of virtuous congresspeople, U.S. congresspeople, okay, senators and congressmen alike, because mind you, senators and congressmen are both allowed under their constitutional privileges as congressional representatives to initiate bills that, if voted upon, could become law if the majority votes yay on that bill. So you could be a congressman or a congresswoman or a senator at the federal level and say, you know what, we're going to devise a bill, right? We don't have all of the facts, right? Because gang stalking is a very deep topic. It's a complex topic. It's a multi-layered topic. And I don't believe that most U.S. politicians or most politicians anywhere in the world have all the facts yet. So despite not having all the facts, if you're a congressman or a congresswoman, despite not having all the facts, you could just take the facts that you hear about online, the most basic facts about gang stalking. It's state sanctioned. It involves the covert mobilization of the population using a signaling mechanism that includes verbal commands and vehicular maneuvers. And you could get them all together and you could say, all right, so I want to devise a bill, right? I as a congressman, I as a congresswoman, I as a senator, I want to devise a bill. And I want the House of Representatives to vote it into law. And then I want the President of the United States to sign off on it. You could just simply write in the bill, you could call the bill the Anti-Gang Stalking Act, or you could call it the Anti-Community Mobbing Act, or you could call it the Anti-Organized Stalking Act. You could call it the Anti-Community Harassment Act. You could call it the Anti-Covert War Act, right? Because all of these things are names for gang stalking, okay? You could call it the Anti-Cause Stalking Act. You could call it the Anti-Hate Stalking Act. There's so many different things you could call this bill. So you could find a name for it. Let's say you call it the Anti-Organized Stalking Act. And you could get together with some people in Congress, some smart people in Congress, and you could draft a 100-page bill. It doesn't have to be very long. 100 pages for a bill, that's small. A 100-page bill is small. It doesn't really matter how big or how small the bill is. It's about the language in it that makes it powerful. Okay? You could devise a bill, a 100-page bill. You could maybe get 10 smart staffers of Congress together, and you as a congressperson could get together with 10 smart staffers, and each one of those staffers could do 10 pages. That's easy. You get 10 staffers, each of them does 10 pages on this bill. Now you have a 100-page bill. And, oh yes, ladies and gentlemen, you could present it to Congress in a 30-minute Senate floor meeting, right? Half hour. And you can let them know what this bill is, what it does, why it's the right thing to do, who it helps, how it strengthens democracy, and how it strengthens constitutional republicanism. And you can present that bill to the House for a vote. I don't doubt, ladies and gentlemen, that I don't doubt that 100% of the Congress people would vote yay on that bill and vote that bill into law. Each and every congressperson would vote yay on the anti-gang-stalking bill, which is designed to identify clandestine gang-stalking and eradicate clandestine gang-stalking as unconstitutional. Okay, and that would be the general makeup of this bill. And at that point, if gang-stalking is practiced, it can be prosecuted as a crime. And you could enter gang-stalking into the U.S. legal code behind that bill. And now it's a matter for the courts to decide the severity of the gang-stalking and what the punishment is for the gang-stalkers themselves. Easy. Easy. And you're not jeopardizing your credibility as a lawmaker either. As a matter of fact, the people in your state that voted you into the U.S. Congress, or the people in your state that voted you into the U.S. Senate, would appreciate and admire you as a politician for having the audacity, the boldness, the wherewithal, the foresight, and the wisdom to address this political problem head on and legislatively. And if and when, of course, the bill is drafted into law and gang-stalking is entered into the U.S. legal code, now your constituents see you as more than just an elected politician. Now they see you as an elected politician of consequence. Okay? The kind of elected politician that they want. The kind of elected politician that would stand up for the rights of citizens on the grandest scale possible and champion legislation that makes their affliction an unconstitutional one and thereby an illegal one. Your voters would love you for it. They would elect you back into office again and again and again because you, as an elected official, passed a law. You don't just talk about passing laws, you actually pass one. And that's something that you would be able to rest your laurels on as a politician, and history would remember you as the senator, the congressman, the congresswoman that put forward legislation that ended this eight-headed beast, this leviathan, this menace to society called clandestine gang stalking. And history would look at you favorably for having been the senator or congressperson to champion that legislation. And you would keep people safe. As a matter of fact, you know who you'd keep safe too? You'd keep local law enforcers safer. Congressmen, senators, you'd keep law enforcers safer. You know why? Because I believe, as a person who's done civilian patrol assignments in the city of Kendall, Florida for 8 months, ladies and gentlemen, I've seen where gang stalking has the capacity to make law enforcement officers' jobs more difficult. Sometimes the synchronization, particularly the vehicular synchronization, puts patrolmen in more danger than they need to be in. I've seen synchronized vehicular maneuvers done around patrolmen as they were driving down the street, nearly causing a car accident for that patrolman or that patrolwoman. So by passing this legislation, you're not only doing the right thing constitutionally, elected officials, you're not only doing the right thing for your citizens, you're doing the right thing for local law enforcers too, and state and federal law enforcers, particularly those law enforcers that drive quite a bit in cars and in vehicles as a part of their jobs. There are law enforcers that encounter synchronized vehicular obstruction of movement, which is a gang stalking tactic. It's a synchronized, timed, signal-based gang stalking maneuver that's meant to make someone uncomfortable using your vehicle as a weapon. I've seen that maneuver done to law enforcers. I didn't catch it on camera because, keep in mind, I can't videotape every instance of gang stalking that I encounter on a daily basis. I simply don't have the storage capacity on my phone or tablet to do that. I capture some. In 2019, I captured quite a bit. In 2020, I captured quite a bit, but it's just simply unrealistic to be able to capture all of it. So I have some instances of it on my YouTube, some instances of it on TikTok, so you can get some semblance of what it looks like. It was from years ago, but it doesn't change much from year to year. So what I recorded for the internet in 2019 as physical evidence, it's still valid today in 2026 because they do the same things over and over again, these stalkers. But ladies and gentlemen, the remedy to gang stalking is all in the fortitude and the capacity of our elected officials to act with integrity. I mean, and keep something in mind, ladies and gentlemen, you know, I'm talking the federal level here. You could pass similar laws at the state and local level. Okay, if you're a state representative or a state senator or even a governor, you can champion legislation or advocate for anti-gang stalking or anti-community mobbing legislation and get it passed. You don't have to know every nook and cranny about gang stalking to put forward a bill that is voted upon in federal or state legislatures. You can basically call out the basics. That it's state sanctioned, that it involves plainclothes operatives, not necessarily just military or police plainclothes, but plainclothes operatives of many different backgrounds and many different occupations. You could say that it's mostly, although it does use federal, state, and local plainclothes operatives, most of the people that do gang stalking don't work in law enforcement. Most of the people are people that do other things in their lives occupationally. You see, it's definitely state guided and state run, but it's malicious in its actions because it disrupts people's lives and it disrupts inalienable rights. Okay, so when you talk about the long and short of what needs to be done. Targeted individuals get the word out. Elected officials can listen. And we're talking federal, state, and local. I mean, keep in mind, city council people can enact laws and regulations too and vote upon them. All right? Now, of course, all city councils have state and federal monitors on them to make sure that these city councils and their city managers or their mayors and vice mayors are acting responsibly in the deriving and passing of these laws. But you could start small. You could use baby steps if you want to. I mean, my ideal scenario is that gang stalking as a practice gets blasted administratively by the executive office of the president or the Supreme Court or the Congress. But you can start small and work your way up also. You can start small. You can start with laws in city councils examining the legality of this organized mobbing mechanism. And you could put forth a stipulation or perhaps a county ordinance about the legality of gang stalking and get it voted into law. Then you can move to the state level as a city councilman or as a city manager or a head of the county. You can get with state representatives and say, hey, we at the county level, we passed a measure recently restricting organized mobbing. These are the behaviors that it restricts, and forward that information to the state representatives and let them vote on something similar. When that's voted into law, the state representatives can share what they've learned with federal representatives in the Congress, and then federal representatives can devise a similar measure, a more overarching measure, a wider reaching measure, and vote that into law. And then the president signs off on it. You see? And then as the years go by, more laws can be passed to further restrict organized mobbing. Now, what a person might ask is, well, what can the president do? What can the president of the United States do? Well, the president of the United States could call a national emergency and cite gang stalking as the root cause of the national emergency. You can let gang stalking be the cause of it. And at that point, federal, state, and local jurisdictions, federal, state, and local legal jurisdictions will look at it as a national problem. So the president could call a national emergency, and I could promise you within 30 days, laws would be passed against gang stalking, organized mobbing, community harassment, organized stalking. Various components of this mechanism would immediately be recognized as problematic. Also, the Supreme Court could look into it and declare it unconstitutional. It would only take one session of the Supreme Court to declare it unconstitutional. Then it goes to the states, and then the states would be forced to recognize it as an entity. Okay? What can the international community do? Well, that's a serious question too, because again, I've not been to any other country outside of Canada, which I went to on a field trip one year for grade school. But At some point, the international community is going to have to take a look at this thing too, because there are people in other countries on various websites and forums that have declared themselves as targeted individuals. And, these other countries, again, I'm not going to name the other countries that I've come across that people have said that they're targeted individuals. Some of these countries I've read about, testimonials from their citizens are allies of the United States, and some of these countries are not allies of the United States. But there is an international targeted individual community, okay? Now, I think that at some point every country is going to review its law books, review its national security mechanism, and review a lot of things to determine whether or not they have gang stalking operating in its borders. And if enough people say enough about it, then eventually their elected officials will look at it critically and substantially, and with a mindset of duty to one's country. Okay, it's patriotic to bring these types of matters to the attention of elected representatives, to the media, and to the general public, as I have done and as so many other targeted individuals have done. Okay. I've not written a book about gang stalking, an actual book. I've actually written the equivalent of about 100 books with my online research and study and the audiovisual content that I produce and the articles that I've written. But there are people out there who have written books about this thing, and all of these things got to be taken into consideration. So I don't think at this point it's responsible for any government representative or any governmental compartment or department to flat out deny the existence of clandestine gang stalking. There are too many people coming forward about it with similar experiences. Okay, that should be a cause of concern. Now, I would like to address here as well those in the political community, the governmental community, the armed services community, and the state, federal, and local law enforcement community that say, well, our position on these matters is going to rely a lot on the way that it's presented to us. So, for example, a targeted individual who presents it as a political problem that has constitutional issues will be looked at in a different way than a targeted individual who comes forward about it and says things like, well, I'm going to burn the American flag in the streets, and I'm going to pass out hateful flyers about the U.S. officials or the law enforcement community, or I'm going to stand on a street corner with a bullhorn and yell out as loud as I can and as hatefully as I can how horrible the United States is. I think that if it's communicated in that way, I think there's less of a chance that it will be handled with the sense of urgency that I believe it should be handled in. I think it's going to require some diplomacy on the parts of the targeted individuals, which is what I practice, okay? But also, I think that it should be handled by targeted individuals with the sense of urgency, because this is your life you're talking about. It is your trajectory through this world that you're talking about. Your opportunities in life are greatly diminished if you have a populace in this country that thinks it's all right to use a covert communication mechanism with one another to violently disrupt people. Okay? I think that is a problem. 1 second, ladies and gentlemen. And I'll also say it like this too. I think that there are some people in the governmental establishment of this country that look at it as, well, why should I? Why should I do targeted individuals a favor of this magnitude and do what I can do to bring the federal, state, or local attention to gang stalking? What's in it for me? And why should I help these targeted persons? Some officials might look at it from that perspective and look at it from that standpoint. My response to that is this. What's in it for you is notoriety in your occupation. Whether it's a law enforcer at this federal, state, or local level, whether it's a mayor or a city councilman, whether it's a state representative or a state senator or a governor, whether it's a congressperson or a senator at the federal level, whether it's a Supreme Court justice, whether it's a federal judge, whether it's the president of the United States or the vice president of the United States. It could be the Speaker of the House that brings attention to it, because the Speaker of the House is essentially the head of the is basically the conductor of congressional matters, and the vice president is the president of the Senate. So there's enough responsibility at the federal, state, and local levels for anybody in any of these governmental jurisdictions to bring attention to the matter. It's not so much as you doing a favor for targeted individuals who are on the fringe with respect to what this topic that they're bringing to your attention. It's about doing what's constitutionally feasible and what's constitutionally accurate and what honors the inalienable rights of every person. That's what it's about. And people, there are also people too that say things like, well, if it's an issue and it doesn't look like your governmental officials are looking to do anything about it, why don't you, as a U.S. citizen, Smith, you could run for city council, you could run for state legislature, you could run for governor, you could run for Congress, you could run as a senator, you could run for president. Yeah, I could. But you have to keep something in mind, ladies and gentlemen. What my main platform would be the eradication of gang stalking. And I think there are enough people in the United States who are not targeted individuals who would like to believe that the people bringing this matter to the forefront are psychotic. And that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate because there have been several programs and sub-programs, or rather projects and sub-projects run in the United States and in other countries that serve as a blueprint for the very mechanism that targeted individuals say that they're facing. You see, what the Stasi did in East Germany in the 70s and 80s is documented. That really happened. What targeted individuals are saying is something similar is happening right here in the United States. And there are thousands of people who can attest to that. And ultimately, that is something that I believe should be drawn on. That's something that needs to be looked at. That's something that needs to be examined. And that's something that needs to be talked about. Otherwise, what do you have here? You have a country that operates as a democracy in name only. Okay, you have a country that operates as a constitutional republic in name only. I mean, could you imagine having a democracy or a constitutional republic where clandestine gang stalking is legal? You can't go to jail for running somebody over with your car on a signal, but you can go to jail for stealing a candy bar out of a gas station. It boggles the mind and it makes no sense, ladies and gentlemen. So let's talk a little more about the international community. The international community can do its own investigations into gang stalking, and if it rules, if various other countries who find that there is gang stalking in their country makes rulings on its legitimacy and on its illegality, then that could encourage the heads of state, the congresses, and the legislatures of other countries to follow suit and declare clandestine gang stalking illegal in their countries as well. You see. So, it's kind of the domino effect. If one country does something about it, other countries will do something about it. It's only on the fringes because so many people are afraid to accept its reality as a disruption protocol and as a social engineering protocol that gives some people in your country an advantage in their life and other people in your country a disadvantage in their life based on factors that are likely not constitutional at the federal or state level. So it's something that no one targeted person can do anything about, especially one who does not have political power. I mean, if I were to run for political office on an anti-gang stalking platform, yeah, that would bring attention to the matter. I mean, I'm not exactly a name in politics. There's no guarantee that I'd win or lose, but it would bring attention to the matter. I mean, it takes resources to run for political office. You have to gain the approval of your local party. If you're a registered Democrat or a Republican, and you'd have to get support from your local party officials. There's no guarantee that your local party officials would sign on. You see? So that's a labor that any targeted individual could try if they wanted to. But not every targeted individual has the resources that it takes to run for political office. It takes resources and connections that a targeted individual just probably doesn't have, okay, to run for political office. But the next best thing you can do is what I've done, ladies and gentlemen. Take to the internet. Put your issues on recordings and on paper for the whole world to see, and eventually it starts a debate. There are heads of state around the world that operate as the head of state in various capacities that could bring this topic to light. It would not take much more than a 10-minute news conference or a 10-minute press conference. To bring these matters to the international forefront. So the mechanisms are there. Me as a target individual, I think most target individuals have taken to writing articles, recording videos. A number of targeted individuals have written music about it. There are other targeted individuals that have written books about it. There are a number of targeted individuals who have done news stories about it. I did a news story that was about community watch networks, but this news story, which is posted on my YouTube and Facebook pages, is more about community watch networks than actual gang stalking, but you can see the result of gang stalking in the video, in the interview. You see the damage that was done to my townhouse by stalkers who were signaled to my home to do break-ins. Break-ins to a targeted person's home is a well-known tactic of gang stalkers, also known as useful idiot stalkers. I, your host, Emmanuel Isaiah Smith, hereby do solemnly swear that the testimony that I am giving you, ladies and gentlemen, concerning clandestine gang stalking through the years is true and accurate. And I, as a sovereign United States citizen, am open to the discussion. I mean, my email and phone number are publicly available. You can contact me at discoursesonphilosophy@gmail.com. You can contact me at eismith.004@outlook.com. You can contact me at my phone number, which is 561-666-7971. You can contact me on my Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr, Amoeba, YouTube, all of TikTok, all of my websites. You can contact me on all of my websites. If you wish to have an in-depth discussion with the person who has put this information out there for the general public to consume. I'm open to having short conversations with persons who have taken an interest in my project. However, you'll probably get more information if you just tune into my websites. You can look into my websites freely. Everything I do is free and open to the public. All of my lectures, all of my articles, all of my audiovisual content, all of my websites are in the public domain, and I consider what I do to be a public service. You can donate to me on PayPal if you choose. If not, you are still free to observe my project and what I do. And I realize I have adversaries, not only here in Miami-Dade County. I also have adversaries in Northeast Ohio. I have adversaries in Eastern Tennessee. People who know me and people who don't know me. People who may have participated in gang stalking and people who may have not participated in gang stalking. People who are sympathetic to the cause of targeted individuals and people who are not sympathetic to the cause of targeted individuals. May or may not see my work and the work of other targeted individuals and say, I refuse to believe that the country I live in is capable of this. That's fine. You don't have to believe that the country that you live in is capable of it. The country that you live in is capable of it because the country you live in has clandestine gang stalking happening right in its borders. And this program has been operating in the territorial entity known as the United States in heightened levels for 10 years, but has been operating in various capacities for 60 years as a social engineering mechanism. Okay, as I've oftentimes said, ladies and gentlemen, the conversation on gang stalking is a slippery slope. Okay? If you want to know what it takes to be a gang stalker, all you have to do is know what it takes to be a useful idiot that follows mindless signals from other useful idiots to do idiotic things to and around people, not only in the workplace, but anywhere. Church, universities, communities, neighborhoods, you name it. And when you talk about these mechanisms, you talk about them in such a way, ladies and gentlemen, as observers, so as to ensure the clarity of the communication that you wish to communicate. I mean, me personally, my communication methods are audio-visual. So I use written articles, I use regular videos, I use extended length videos, I use shortwave videos, I use all kinds of different methods to communicate what I'm talking about. And the reason I use different methods is because I know that I have a diverse audience. And I also know that the view count that I have on my various websites and the subscriber count that I have on my various websites is not indicative of the interest that my program has generated over the past 10 years. And I believe that the gangstalking conversation is live and is in full effect, and that this conversation will one day lead to the end of clandestine gangstalking. I believe that this conversation will lead to the repeal of clandestine gangstalking. And that'll be better for me, it'll be better for you, ladies and gentlemen, and it'll be better for the global community. Thank you for tuning in.